Yeah, I'm wearing glasses for this video because I have a script on the screen. Over the years I've played many games, and through time I've built up quite a taste. I like some games that old heads despise, and I love certain games that the multiplayer addicted kids nowadays wouldn't even think about playing. And I've built my own taste, not through what others are saying and playing, but through what I've personally played. Yeah, sometimes I play the game because it was recommended to me or because my friends forced me to play it. Sometimes I played the game because it was on sale, and sometimes I've played the game just because I was too intrigued to see what's going on in them. But most of the time, I play what I find appealing to me and not what is popular. I know that in certain parts of this rant I might sound like a boomer, but I don't care because I am pissed off by the current state of the gaming industry, and I'm not alone in this. There's a certain pattern I've begun to notice over the years. I used to play popular games as well, and not because I wanted, but because it was what my friends were playing. And only recently did I realize that the most popular games are often dog shit that run-of-the-mill shitty YouTubers and streamers push. These games usually die out within a year or continue to just barely cling to relevancy after the initial takeoff, but generally these games fall into downright obscurity. That's why these mainstream games are usually easy to run. You need to reach the wildest audience possible, and for that you need to account for the fact that most people's PCs are dog shit and for the fact that most of your audience are going to be kids with no money. That's why CS2 and other games like Valorant or League of Legends attract such a large audience. These games are free to play because they are competitive games and because people just like to compete with each other, because it's really hard to get rid of our animalistic tendencies back from the ages when we were just a bunch of monkeys fighting for territory or some shit like that. And that's the first big issue I have with modern gaming. Every single big fucking game nowadays is apparently free to play. And why? Well, because people don't have money, and because skins and microtransactions and battle passes and whatever are going to make you way more money. For these kids, it's easy to buy a battle pass or a skin because it's not as expensive as buying a whole fucking game every couple of weeks, and because people with jobs can spare a few shekels to get that nice skin. But it's just a couple of bucks, so who gives a shit, right? Well, I give a shit, because in the long run you end up spending way more money on a free-to-play game than you would on a paid game, which incentivizes developers to create games that push microtransactions. This skin shit that Bethesda and Valve started is what made the gaming industry so bad in the first place, but that's a rant for another day. I get it, without things like shareware Doom, we wouldn't have modern gaming at all. We wouldn't have thousands of Doom and Half-Life and Stalker mods, hell, all of those mods completely for free. But my problem isn't with the free mods or free games, my problem is with the free-to-play games that are built on skin-centered microtransactions that are designed specifically to sell you some shit, and this also counts for pay-to-win games, such as mobile games. One reason why I mostly stopped playing new releases is that even single-player games nowadays don't really give as much shit about their mechanics as much as they care about being flashy. And even the companies know this. Just look on how games are made nowadays, beautiful environments and scenes beautifully crafted to amaze the player. But then you get to the mechanics and you find out that it's the same thing you've seen in a dozen other games, just in different coats of nice paint. It's like choosing between a silver and a golden shit. Yeah, they both look nice in different ways, but they are still literal pieces of feces underneath. Remember what Nakey Jakey said in his analogy of Rockstar games being Lego sets? Yeah, it looks flashy, but in the long run it's less entertaining than having a box of random Lego pieces and doing whatever the fuck you want with it. That is why I'd rather play the original Mafia 1 that looks like it has everything made from paper models than its definitive edition, simply because of the fact that the gameplay in the original is infinitely more fun. Even though both games are technically linear, the classic version doesn't hold your hand like the flashy Lego set of definitive edition, which treats you like a mentally challenged person that needs assistance on every step. And of course, I have quite a few games that are modern and flashy that are quite demanding on the system. But I hate this notion that we need to constantly upgrade our PCs every 2 or 3 years just to play play the newest and flashiest games with the most lifelike graphics. And when you finally sit down to play that shiny new game, sure it's beautiful, but the gameplay, you know, the fucking core of the game, just plain out sucks dick. Why do people play Lethal Company? Because it has incredible mechanics. Why did people love Among Us? Because it has or had great mechanics and fosters amazing interactions. Why is Cruelty Squad so popular in certain circles, even though it looks like absolute fucking fever dream displayed through the mighty power of Windows XP version of Paint? Well, because the mechanics are fun. These games are fun not because of what they look like, but because of how they play. Indie devs keep proving that you don't need the best graphics in your game if you make the mechanics of it fun, which is something that executives at big companies just seem to not understand. It's the same shit that befalls the movie industry. We keep getting bigger and bigger blockbusters that are more visually appealing, like every Marvel movie or every Transformers movie, but just like in the case of gamers, people usually don't watch movies because of how they look, but because of how their stories are constructed. You can have a movie that looks absolutely dogshit, but if it has a great story, it will be infinitely more liked than any movie that has a shit ton of CGI in nearly every scene. And that's why I plan to absolutely shit on Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order as a part of another video, but scrapped it because the game isn't even worth the video. Sure, the game is visually stunning and looks like a wet dream of every Star Wars fan, but under the hood, the game is just an uninspired Star Wars version of Dark Souls, but worse in every aspect. Back in 2014, I've got my own PC, and not just something that was a hand-me-down notebook with broken screen, not something that was built from parts that someone else in my family didn't need anymore. No, it was a brand new PC, and it fucking lasted me 9 years up to the winter of 2023. And why? Because as new games continued being released, the more shit they got in terms of gameplay. I still have the graphics card that replaced the old Gigabyte Windforce R9 280X after it exploded, and my Ryzen 5 7600X rocks with it. You might think, but Randy, 4 gigs in 2024? That sucks dick, you need at least 8 gigs now. No, I fucking don't. I didn't even need a new PC, and I didn't want to buy a new one if it wasn't for the fact that Steam stopped supporting Windows 7. That's right, I raw dogged that shit to the very last breath, and I still would have been using Windows 7 and that old PC if it wasn't for the fact that Steam ended its support. Godspeed, you fucking legendary machine. Some people called it the millennial or Gen Z writing, but I just call it the modern writing. Games always came with some sort of message, after all, most art pieces do that. However, modern writing in games is either the indie writing type, where they are trying to create baits for people to create fandoms around investigating the true meaning of their story like FNAF did, or it is the AAA type, where the games are trying to shove a point down your throat. Instead of trying to give you an interesting story like Yakuza or giving you great gameplay, again like Yakuza, they try to prove some moral point. And games always did that, and art in general was always like this. However, most of the modern moral points are really half-baked or not even done properly. Take Mafia for example. Dan Vavra, the writer of the original game, said in a live stream with a Czech streamer Agrajlus that the game was supposed to show you the amazing life of a gangster and the adventures they have and how they are basically creating their own rules because the system failed to provide people with security. They had basically created their own government system with rules that they all agreed upon and followed, and if anyone stepped out of the line, they got dealt with. Dan Vavra wanted to show how despite all the honor and despite all the glamour of the mob life and despite the facade of the family, gangsters eventually end up killing each other because their lust for power and money prevails over their sense of a family unit. However, for some fucking reason, the whole point of Definitive Edition could be condensed down to the sentence, family is important. Like, what? Tommy's family was never the focus of the original, no one's personal life was ever the focus of the original was centered around the morality of being a gangster. That is all completely thrown out of the window and is basically replaced by, hey, Tommy would do anything to sacrifice himself for his family, now cry. To make this more clear, the whole family thing isn't about relatives, but more about a close unit of people surrounding the main character. These games are usually trying to prove that you should care about the people close to you, no matter whether they are your biological relatives or your friend group. and for sure, you should. But can please all of the modern writing just stop with this shit? And where else is this family the point of the whole story? Fast and Furious, Harry Potter, God of War, Red Dead Redemption, Witcher 3, Life is Strange 2, Star Wars the sequel trilogy, Wolfenstein 2, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Metro Exodus. Most modern video games and stories in this modern writing are centered around this message. It's literally the same Disney original movies as Point, but dressed in different universes and intellectual properties. And it's so overplayed. There are many games that don't center around this concept, but what I'm trying to say here is that video game writing is slowly slipping into that area where AAA games are about family and where indie games are either all in the head or are trying to bait people into trying to discover their lore. At this point, it's even a joke in Pyro's videos where every single indie horror game is all in the head in one way or another. However, there is a reason why writers are getting lazier and lazier. They are writing stories that they know will work, because the whole family trope has been tried and tested over hundreds and hundreds of years of stories in all different types of media. They need to appeal to most gamers. They need to appeal to ordinary people. But ordinary people don't give a single shit because multiplayer games exist. We as humans fucking love to compete. I mean, look at the games that had spawned their own competitive scenes. Super Smash Bros, Tekken, Street Fighter, Counter-Strike, Dota 2, League of Legends, Valorant, Fortnite. It seems like developers nowadays either want to create this next big skin-funded competitive multiplayer game, or they are going for the live service game model. Many people have been ripping live service games a new rectal entrance for a few years, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but the gist of it is this. The game preservation is impossible with live service games, DLCs are shoehorned in to get anything substantial out of the gameplay after the release version is completed. These games die way too quickly. Ubisoft all tried making the crew lost media game by deleting it from people's libraries, and so on. And it's this that pisses me off to no end, because most of the issues that we have with games nowadays could be squarely blamed on the fact that multiplayer games got way too popular. Microtransactions? That started because of multiplayer in FIFA, and got popular because of CSGO. Every fucking game ever having a Battle Royale mode? That happened because of H1Z1, PUBG and Fortnite, and so on and so on. We can track every bad trend that we hate all the way back to some multiplayer game that was relatively alright. Something might seem like a good idea at start, but it may eventually be harmful to the industry overall. It's not like people don't play single player games anymore, they clearly are still playing them, but most of my friends nowadays just play multiplayer games. And even that, the fact that multiplayer games got too popular is what killed the simple multiplayer games. Who gives a fuck nowadays about Team Fortress 2? Who gives a fuck about what the next Battlefield will be, when we all know everyone will be playing the base game Conquest maps only anyways? Who cares about the next COD game when we know the single player will be dogshit and that it will most likely be another attempt by Activision to push Warzone? There are so many great multiplayer games, but they are overlooked by the brainwashed casual gamers because multiplayer games nowadays are the majority of the market, and that's where the real money is. Back when gaming was something just we outcasts were doing, we were getting a ton of amazing games on all sorts of platforms, both in multiplayer and single player. But as soon as the money started flowing in, the corporations realized the massive potential of multiplayer. And I'm not trying to gatekeep gaming here, that's the last thing I want to do. While movies prioritize the visual aspects and books utilize your imagination to immerse you in the story, gamers utilize the interactivity to immerse you in the story or in the gameplay. But most people just don't give a shit because having skins is way cooler and profitable for the developers than experiencing a properly good story. See, with single players you pay once, maybe twice for a base game and a DLC or two. But with multiplayer you keep on buying items and you keep fueling the machine. You are literally voting with your wallets. I think that Razorfist said it the best when he said that gamers have the industry they deserve because they keep giving corporations money they don't deserve. We've heard this 1,000 times already. but I think that it's time we get rid of fucking XP trees. Every fucking game has one. Why can't we have a point system like in System Shock 2, Coder 2, or literally any fucking better example ever? I could go on. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, Dying Light, any Far Cry game after 3, Prey, any Batman Arkham game, like, when does this shit stop? XP trees are the single worst mechanic in any game ever. I get that we as humans also progressively gain experience in certain fields, but actually no, we fucking don't. You can learn all the steps of learning music theory, playing a guitar, and then recording and mastering songs in that order, but I never learned how to read notes, and I sort of improvised my way through song making before that. We as humans learn what we set our minds to. We don't learn in XP trees. You can learn how to drive a car without learning how to build it. You can make a baby say words without knowing any real scientific theoretical stuff on parenting. Some of the best games of all time don't even have some sort of XP systems where you upgrade your abilities. In Half-Life you gain new guns progressively and you learn by yourself on which guns work best in which environments. In Mafia you rarely if ever get new weapons bigger than pistols and you learn without any tutorial on how to use guns effectively over time. You can't just run in and shoot everything, you actually need to learn proper combat etiquette by yourself without the game holding your hand. On top of GTA 5 doing the same thing as Mafia, your abilities like stamina, swimming and flying get better the more you run, swim and fly. A good game never explicitly tells you when to use an ability, nor does it give you a fucking tutorial or a chance to try it out, because you have to figure out how to use everything that's available to you through your own attempts. XP trees just aren't bad design, it's what we call dark design to make the player waste more time doing useless shit in the game so that they can sell you more fucking skins and DLCs and weapon packs and whatever the fuck else, or to just get you over the time limit to refund. And it's not just one game, but to some degree you can think of at least 3 games that have the exact same mechanics. Batman Arkham, Far Cry 3, and The Evil Within 2, all of these games that are considered as some of the greatest games ever have these stupid mechanics. Modern games are not fun. Well, they are, but these are far in between one another. Every year we hear about 1 or 2 good games that come out, 3 if we are lucky. The rest is just the same shit, be it over-the-shoulder third-person open-world cover looter shooter, Souls-like games, indie masked horror, a COD-like multiplayer FPS with shitty campaign no one ever plays, a looter FPS, an MMO that will die within 2 years, a survival crafting game, or another iteration of the same old fucking sports game. Like, seriously, we don't have any new fucking ideas anymore. This chapter is basically the previous one but generalized. We are not really inventing new mechanics or new ideas because the AAA corpos want to stick to what works, and indie game devs are proving that they can create new and interesting mechanics, themes, hell, even entire new concepts for games, but they are too experimental for the general audiences to engage in them, or they come from games that never reach the mainstream despite having an established fan base. And sometimes when a game comes out with an innovative mechanic like Life is Strange or an even older Silent Hill Shattered Memories, both games I've made essays about, then the execution is absolutely botched. I glazed both of these games in the video, so here's a condensed version for those who do not want to watch the collective 4 hours of me rambling. Both games had an innovative mechanic that was absolutely botched in the final execution, and to a certain degree the mechanics got copied by other games down the line, be it in the same or in a different genre. And again, I have to quote Razorfist here. I think that he said it the best when he said that a game that is trying to be everything to everyone is nothing to no one, or something like that. Modern games are doing too much and are not trying to stand out. Take those third-person open-world games. Mechanically, most of them have the same core mechanics. The changing settings affect only some mechanics that are just not enough to set them apart as different games, which results in most of them practically being the same game with minor mechanical variations and vastly different designs. And that's why we are in the third gaming industry crash. Because AAA games take too long to be made, and when they eventually come out, it's literally the same old fucking game, just slightly different. And so no one buys the new AAA game because no one really fucking cares if they already own a different game that is 75% the same. This chapter is a last minute addition, but here is something that grinds my gears more than sand and dentures. In the last 10 years or so, gaming industry has seen this rise of cults. Be it cults of development studios, cults of franchises, or even cults of developers, these cults gargle up or viciously hate anything that the subject of their cult pushes out. And here are two examples of those. Every time I've even expressed a slight distaste towards the cult of Kojima, I got shat on literally anywhere, with people saying that I'm just a hater and that I don't really know why they love their dear Kojimbo so much because I've never played a game of his. I'm not gonna go too deep on Kojima because Razorfist had already done that for me in his video The Cult of Kojima and his various videos regarding Kojima and his video games. But still, the reason why I have never ever played a single game of his is simply that the fanbase is glazing him so hard that it would make a seasoned veteran porn star in the porn industry jealous of their dick-sucking skills. Their morbidly obese obnoxiousness and unwillingness to accept anything else than praise towards their mastermind overlord is exactly what keeps putting me off, because in case I would like a Kojima game, I would have troubles with admitting that I like the same thing as that bunch of fucking retards. In other words, we've had enough of these motherfucking 3 hours long video essays about Metal Gear Solid 3. Sorry for that use of the R word, but I have ADHD and I'm dumb as shit. So, I have the R word card. And the same goes for the opposite. Gaming cults where fans viciously shit on their supposedly favorite franchises. The fanbase most notorious for this is the Silent Hill fanbase. They literally hate anything past the fourth game, The Room, and even with that game it's largely contested if it's a good or a bad game. These pricks who had never even came into a vicinity of a walkie-talkie playing farts of a woman are still complaining over the looks of Angela in Silent Hill 2 remake. In the original Silent Hill 2, which is still one of my least liked Silent Hill games, suck it idiots, I refuse to elaborate, the gal was supposed to be 16 or 19, but looked like a 35 years old divorcee with 2 children and a shit ton of loans after a night shift at a gas station that got robbed 3 times during her shift. I know that there is a lot to criticize both about Konami and about Goober Team with their walk-in simulator extravaganza of Layers of Fear series, but holy shit, out of everything, that is the one thing y'all decided to hyper-focus on? Well, maybe the reason why we haven't gotten any proper gameplay footage is exactly that. Because you mental acrobats don't really give a shit about gameplay, you only care about whether the female models in the games you play will be usable by your favorite Rule 34 artists. Fucking gooners. I could go on about these cults and fanbases, but my main point still stands. Gamers become fans of some studio or game, and the studios decide to capitalize on that blind, unquestioned love to a point where they will literally shit out any kind of a terrible game to their fans who will gladly gobble it up like they are in a sketchy German adult film production. So, how can we fix this giant mess? How can we make the AAA companies finally listen to us? Certainly, public outrage can do something, but in the long run it is shown time and time again that companies like Ubisoft or EA will be as exploitative towards their employees and gamers as they can be. Therefore, just crying about bad games doesn't do shit, because the people that actually care about the quality of games are a relatively small part of the entire gamerdom. And I'm really sorry that I'm glazing Razor this much, but he had already provided the answer when talking about culture in his video Don't Cry About the Culture, Become the Culture. And I think that the message of the video I've mentioned is true for gaming itself as well. If you really care about video games, learn how to program stuff. Change the industry yourself and don't just cry about it on the internet. Actually, learn management. Actually learn how to code shit. Make your own games. Write your own stories. Actually make the games that you want to play, because the AAA companies sure as shit won't give you what you want unless you shell out money. But nothing will change unless the gamers stop being a bunch of whiny bitches and actually start doing something besides just jerking off and playing games they actually hate. That's all for me. God fucking speed! audio sync.